Hey everyone, this is WobblyWallaby. Your Khalitzburg damage may be lower because of these 10 mistakes. I came up with this list based on video comments and my own experience playing Khalitzburg in Ragnarok Mobile. Here are 10 mistakes that may be lowering your damage. And no, not spending enough money isn't one of them. Number 1. Not having 500 or more hit. Legend bosses and PSR Dragon needs 500 hit. For example, on my alt account I have 506 hit. Here I hit the golem and don't miss. Next I remove an accessory with a hit enchant and now my hit is at 497. You might think, how bad could this be? Well, surprisingly, you will now see that once I hit the golem I start missing. Now, the best way to deal with this is to invest in dex. Each point of dex will give 1 extra hit. Multiclassing is a great way to get extra dex, and also Khalitzburg's Acer Monument will give you 54 hit as well. Now this time I remove all my Acer Monument nodes and now my hit is at 423. Now watch how many misses I get. I can barely hit the golem and his health is barely falling. So please make sure your hit is at least at 500, otherwise if you miss your hits it doesn't matter how great your gear is. Next for number 2, not dealing with weapon penalty versus large monsters. Here's my gear on my alt. I have no Drake star card and I will have a weapon penalty. I hit the dragon for about 16,000 attack. Next I eat a normal precision stone. You can see the size control is in the status now. Now I hit the dragon for about 20,000 attack, which is a big jump in damage. Make sure you stock up on normal precision stones as they are pretty cheap but very painful if you don't have them. Many of the bosses are large, which means the weapon penalty from using her weapon will only give you 75% damage unless you use a normal precision stone, have a whitesmith in your party, or use gachas to get past this. I personally think the normal precision stone is a pretty cheap way to get past this. Next for number 3, not hitting optimal stats for instances. For legend instances like Isles and Museum, you should have at least 80% penetration, at least 50% skill damage, and 200% ignore defense. Going beyond 200% ignore defense won't do much, unlike penetration and skill damage. But luckily for Khalitzburg, her passive that gives 1% ignore defense for each 1% penetration makes achieving 200% ignore defense very easy. Here are a breakdown of some of the potential sources. On my main account, my penetration is at 108.75%. Blessing of Goddess and Acer Monument gives a lot, as well as her skill Flower of Desperation. There are also many other sources that contribute to it, including her class-specific weapon, which adds 1% penetration per refined level. I also use the Dreamy Cat Sid card to deal with the non-MVP and mini monsters as well. Some additional sources is the Combustible Knife for the Oracle Mirror. I use this on my alt account. Also Lord of Vane and Andre Star card as other sources I've used in the past. Next for skill damage, I have 58.5%. Again, the real MVP skill here is Flower of Desperation, giving 30%, which is huge. I also recommend using the gacha It's Too Late, which gives 10% skill damage, and Brave Warrior's Pauldron at tier 5 for 14. Next for additional sources, I do use Bunny Creamy Candy if I don't have Elemental Advantage for the extra 15% skill damage. Also Winter Crown and Haunted Candlesticks are also great. For cards, the Moonlight Tangelion Star card is also great since it gives 2 each. Next for Ignore Defense, I have 237.25%. Some notable sources include the Minora's Deposit effect for 50%, Blessing of Goddess, Acer Monument, Morale and Chance, and Flower of Desperation's insane effect. Some additional sources include the Armor Breaking Attack Ruin for 12, and also the Rosa chain in your Shadow Equipment slot. Next, here's my gear overview to achieve those stats on my main. The accessory cards do change depending on the target. In the future, I'll do an updated guide of this build since this is my main class right now. Next, here's my Shadow Equipment, Oracle Mirror, and Relic. Next for mistake number 4 is running out of SP. Khalitzburg uses a ton of SP, more so than any other physical class I have played. I used to find myself without enough SP, which leads to missed attacks while I pop a potion. Now, there are a few ways to deal with this. First, you can cook 999 0-star foods and eat them for the SP discharge. You won't lose the SP discharge even after the food time limit runs out. Here, after eating 999 rookie meat steaks, I have 167,000 SP ready for discharge. Second, you can use potions in your auto bar. Here I buy blue potion 2s from the item NPC. Then, from auto attack and top left, I add these potions via fast add. Third, you can use SP recovery items like honey for 25% max SP. This is a good way to get some instant SP. I've had some emergencies where I had to eat starflower stamen for 100% SP recovery, which is a total waste to be honest, since that should be used for HP. Lastly, the one I now recommend is the Arcane Ruin. I got inspired by seeing this Arcane Ruin being used by Build to Kill. Even at level 20, which isn't a lot of investment, I found after enabling this I never run out of SP anymore, especially for places like Echoing Corridor where you can't use potions from your inventory. This Arcane Ruin is incredible since it sustains your SP. Next for number 5, not using Echo Petals before a fight. Don't start a battle without manually casting Echo Petals. Instead, cast it manually, then begin your fight. Dropping 3 Rose Petals near your target is important because when each of these are picked up, Doom is inflicted, which will make enemies in 5-meter range deal 30% less damage and take 30% more damage. It's good to cast this manually and picking up the petals before going auto to ensure you're debuffing the target immediately. Next for number 6, not picking up rose petals. Don't be lazy, pick up those petals, as they will be generated as you deal damage or use skills. I've had people ask me if they really need to, and also when there are a lot of Khalitzburgs around, the petals are everywhere so it's hard to see. As mentioned before, the debuff is amazing and also the extra damage, so definitely pick them up. One of the reasons she's so busted is because of her debuff, so definitely use this if you want to shred through targets. Next for number 7, not re-rolling the Flower Desperation Ruin. A truly painful part of this class is having a second line of this ruin. For example, mine is horrible since I have 3%. I spent lots of ruins trying to get a better percentage by re-rolling. This one does make a huge difference since you're constantly spamming attacks, so getting a chance to crit is vital. I've seen Khalitzburg teammates with high first lines destroying me in damage because of it. If you're a Khalitzburg main, this is one of the ruins you'll have to reroll for. Next for number 8, using the wrong elemental converter or cards. Whenever I do PSR or White Star Airship, I always ask my party if they plan to draw convert, since that changes what kind of cards and gadgets I use. It is important to communicate, especially if you're in a public party, otherwise your damage won't be optimal. Also in Legend Museum and Isles, the wind and holy damage reductions is 90% instead of 70%, like the other elements, so I wouldn't recommend converting to those elements as your damage will greatly be affected. Also with Ghost Element for floor 2 of Museum and Isles, neutral only does 25%, so make sure you convert to something or your damage is going to suffer. For example, in floor 2 of Isles, I usually still use my water converter since I used it on floor 1, and also make sure you use the 2 accessory cards for doing more damage to ghost monsters. Next, if you struggle with the heart in floor 3 of Isles, make sure you use Magnum Break from the Marine Sphere card to reset your element to neutral. The heart is holy, so fire, earth, wind, and water only do 75% damage, and holy is 25%, whereas neutral is 100%. Next for number 9, not taking advantage of anti-death options. In recent times, Shadow Equipment Tier 5 introduced some great anti-death options. For example, I use the Skeleton Bracer Tier 5, which offers some anti-death. I would highly recommend you choose a Shadow Equipment that offers anti-death and get it to Tier 5 and 50% Shadow Progress. Also, if you time her Wish Flower properly, she can dodge some AoE. I always use that whenever I deal with the full screen PSR dragon to avoid dying. Here, I use it just before the explosion to dodge, and I have no anti-death foods here, so I'm definitely surviving. Next, I show what happens if I don't use Wish Flower and end up dying. Use these in addition to anti-death foods, and because Khalitzburg's biggest weakness is her anti-death, definitely take advantage of these. After all, a dead Khalitzburg gives 0 DPS. Finally, for number 10, not maximizing your Agi for Wishflower damage, which is a huge way to burst. Since the cap is at 300, you can try to aim for getting 300 Agi. On my main account, I have 283 when I go solo with buffs. If a priest gives me blessing, I'll have 300 because it adds an extra 25. Some sources of my Agi include multi-class ending at 30, 10 from Relic, 10 from Agi B meals, 10 from Acer Monument, 159 from investing in Agi, 4 from Adventure Handbook deposits, and 12 from being Adventure Class A. I'm not too sure where the leftover Agi came from, but it's possibly because your character doesn't start with 0 Agi. I hope you learned about these common mistakes and this will help you boost your Khalitzburg's damage. She's such a strong class, but if you ever wonder why people are outdamaging you as a Khalitzburg despite having worse Adventure Handbook deposits or ruins or gears, then some of these factors may be the case. Got any more tips for sharing with Khalitzburg? Let me know in the comments section. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Here's a video that I'd recommend, and if you want more Khalitzburg guides, check out this playlist over here.